My wife was stealing from my company to fund her lover's business, and that was what destroyed everything I'd spent 10 years building. Let me take you back to the beginning, when none of this had happened yet. When things were simple. When I still believed trust was a virtue, not a weakness. I started the company in my garage. I was 29, broke, and stubborn as hell. My first warehouse had oil stains on the floor and one flickering light bulb. I sold reusable coffee cups of all things. Environmentally friendly, minimalist design, customizable for corporate gifts. It wasn't sexy, but it paid the rent. My first sale? $128. I still have the notification email printed and framed above my desk. It's a reminder of the moment I realized I might actually make it. Molly came into the picture just after the business started turning a profit. We met at a mutual friend's engagement party. She was wearing a navy blue dress and talking passionately about compound interest to someone who clearly had no idea what she was saying. I was intrigued. She had worked in finance, back office, budgeting, compliance, calm, intelligent, with a smile that made you feel like you were being let in on a secret. We dated for a year and got married in a quiet ceremony at the botanical garden. She never cared for extravagance, said she preferred meaning over money. When the company grew big enough to need real accounting, I asked her to join. Not because she was my wife, but because she was the most competent person I knew. I trusted her more than anyone. And why wouldn't I? She kept things running smoothly. Payroll, taxes, audits, all of it disappeared from my plate. I could finally focus on scaling the business. Our kitchen talks turned into business meetings over homemade pasta. She knew when to challenge me and when to encourage me. We were a team, or so I thought. There were little routines we had. Coffee every morning, always made by whoever woke up first. Lunches together in the break room. After-hours wine in the office when we pulled long days before launch deadlines. We laughed a lot. She'd call me boss in a joking way. I'd call her CFO, Chief of Fine Opinions. I thought we were unbreakable. One Thursday we were reviewing quarterly spending. I skimmed through the expense sheet like I always did, mostly glancing for anything unexpected. I stopped at a line item labeled External Consultant, Brand Redesign. "Who's this?" I asked, nudging the screen toward her. She didn't look up right away, just a pause, half a second too long, then she smiled, tight, not her usual easy one. "Oh, that's just a freelance designer. We needed someone to tweak the holiday packaging. It was a rush job. I'll fix the labeling." Just a flicker of a shadow across her face. A flicker I didn't know yet would lead to an avalanche. The office was quiet, too quiet. It was almost midnight. Everyone had gone home hours ago. The hum of the vending machine down the hall and the soft tapping of my fingers on the keyboard were the only sounds in the room. My coffee had gone cold, untouched for nearly 20 minutes. I didn't even notice. Stacks of printed reports lay scattered across my desk, like fallen soldiers in a war I hadn't realized I was fighting. I kept telling myself I was just being paranoid, that I was tired, that the pressure was making me see ghosts in numbers. But I couldn't shake it, that flicker on Molly's face when I asked about the freelancer. It had been gnawing at me, quietly, relentlessly. So I opened the company's bank interface, something I hadn't done in months, not since Molly took over the finances. Not because I was lazy, because I trusted her. The login took 3 tries. My fingers were trembling a little. I blamed the caffeine. Maybe it was something else. The numbers loaded slowly, line by line. Payments, vendors, salaries, standard stuff. And then, something caught my eye. A transfer of $1,100 labeled consulting services. 2 weeks earlier, $950. 3 weeks before that, $1,200. Always to the same bank account. No company name, just initials, R's. My heart was pounding now. I opened an old copy of the transaction ledger Molly had sent me for the same period. Line by line I began comparing. My fingers moved fast, like they were trying to outrun what my brain was starting to process. But the pattern was undeniable. The transfers weren't in her reports. She had deleted them, or hidden them, every single one. I opened Excel. I started plotting dates and amounts, coloring in each transaction in red. The screen looked like it was bleeding. She'd been doing it for over a year, always small amounts, just enough not to raise suspicion, just enough for me to write off as routine costs. But added together, over $30,000. Gone, stolen. By my wife. I printed the spreadsheet. The ink smeared slightly in the corner from the pressure of my thumb. I didn't leave a note. I just left the stack of paper neatly on the kitchen counter in our home office, right next to the coffee maker, right where she'd see it in the morning. Only she didn't show up the next day. No text, no call. Around 10:30 a.m. I got a Slack message: headache, staying home today, sorry. No emojis, no usual warmth, just cold words on a screen. I sat there staring at the message, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Not anger, not even betrayal. Just the slow, sinking realization that the woman I trusted most had been lying to me, right under my nose. I always told myself, trust the ones you love. Without question. But now I was beginning to think that trust wasn't a virtue. It was a luxury I could no longer afford. The new sign went up last week. Bright colors, sleek font, and a name that sounded trendy but hollow: EvoCore Solutions. I hadn't paid much attention until one of my junior designers pointed it out. Have you seen the place across the street? He asked. Looks kinda familiar, doesn't it? At first I brushed it off. There are copycats everywhere, that's part of the game. But today, something told me to take a closer look. Maybe it was the sleepless night, or the way Molly hadn't looked me in the eyes at breakfast this morning. Or maybe it was the spreadsheet still burned into the back of my eyelids. So I crossed the street. The glass doors of EvoCore slid open with a soft whoosh, and I was immediately hit by a wave of déjà vu. The layout, the lighting, even the scent. Fresh citrus with a hint of cedar, exactly like ours. The front desk was manned by a couple of young interns, maybe 22, fresh out of college and grinning like they'd just landed their dream job. A row of polished marketing posters lined the hallway. Same messaging tone, same color palette. Hell, even the fonts were similar. I asked to speak with someone about a potential collaboration. A tall woman with a tablet led me into the conference room. She poured me a glass of lemon water and started her pitch. We're a bold, disruptive startup specializing in brand alignment and digital strategy, she said, like she'd swallowed a TED Talk. And the owner? I asked casually. Oh, Nathan Walker. He's a very progressive entrepreneur, super visionary. Built this in less than a year. Nathan Walker. The name hit like a crack of thunder. It sounded vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place it. Until she pulled out an iPad and showed a photo of him shaking hands with a local councilman during a ribbon-cutting ceremony. And there he was, tan, gleaming teeth, that charming, shallow smile, the type that convinces people to invest in dreams made of sand. And then I remembered. I had seen him once, just once. It was early, maybe 8 a.m. outside the gym where Molly worked out. He had been stepping out of her car, casually adjusting his jacket, laughing at something she'd said. I'd thought it was a colleague carpooling. I had waved. He had smiled and waved back like we were old friends. I didn't think much of it. Until now. Back at home, I didn't bother turning on the lights. I went straight to the liquor cabinet, poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon, and dropped into the armchair in our living room. The wedding photo on the mantel caught my eye. Taken 6 years ago in Big Sur. Her hair was longer then. The ocean wind caught it just right. I was smiling like a fool. She had her hand on my chest. We looked like we believed in forever. I picked up the frame, stared at it for a long moment, and finally said aloud, voice barely above a whisper, "You really traded all of this for him?" And the silence that answered me felt colder than any lie she'd told. Molly said she was going away for the weekend, a girls' retreat with her college friends. She kissed me on the cheek before she left, said she needed a little mental reset. I nodded, like a fool, and even helped her pack the car. That night, I sat alone in our bedroom, the silence pressing against me like a weight. I stared at her side of the bed. Her robe was still tossed over the chair, vanilla and lavender lingered in the air. I didn't plan to snoop, not really. But I knew her laptop password. It had never changed. Our anniversary date. I opened it. I shouldn't have, but I did. Her email loaded. The interface felt familiar, almost boring. She was neat. Color-coded folders, flagged bills, subject lines like Q3 payroll adjustments and yoga workshop RSVP. I clicked on the trash folder, and that's where everything fell apart, quietly, clinically, without fanfare. There were dozens of emails, some threads long, others just fragments. All to the same address, n.walker@evocoreinc.com. I opened the first chain: attachments, Excel spreadsheets, cash flow reports, marketing budget breakdowns, then screenshots, our client analytics, sales projections, logo mock-ups I hadn't even shown the team yet, and then the messages. "You're amazing, Malls. I seriously couldn't do this without you. Once this place takes off, we won't need to hide anything. Your husband's too busy playing boss to notice a few missing zeros. You're not just helping me, you're building a future for us." One email hit harder than the rest. "Molly, I'm doing this for us. Trust me, baby, we're almost there." I stared at the screen for a long time. I expected rage, or betrayal, or that sharp, bitter heat you see in movies. The screaming, the broken glass, the fists against the wall. But none of that came. Instead, something inside me just went quiet, like a candle snuffed out in a draft. No sound, no flame, just the smoke left hanging. I leaned back in the chair, my eyes burning, my mouth dry. I wasn't angry, I was hollow. This wasn't just about stolen money or corporate sabotage. This was something worse. And she called it love. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Even the refrigerator seemed to hum more softly, like it didn't want to interrupt. Molly came home around 9 p.m. No suitcase. No glow of a relaxing girls' trip. Just tired eyes and a nervous smile. She kicked off her shoes and walked into the kitchen where I was already waiting. 2 mugs sat untouched on the counter. One for me, one for her, a ritual we used to share without thinking. I didn't say anything at first. Instead, I slid the folder across the table. Neatly printed, no drama, no highlighted rage. She looked down at it, confused, then she flipped it open. A few pages in, she froze. I watched the color drain from her face. And then the tears came. She started, her voice barely above a whisper. Her hands trembled as she closed the folder. I didn't think you'd find it like this." "I asked you about the numbers," I said calmly. "You told me it was a mistake." She dropped into the kitchen chair like her legs couldn't hold her up anymore. "He said we were building something," she murmured. "He told me he loved me, that we were going to have a future." I stayed quiet. There was nothing to say that wouldn't sound like salt in a wound. "You transferred $47,000 to him, Molly," I said slowly. "My money, our money. And he used it to start a business. Across the street. Without you." She nodded, eyes glassy. "He's not answering my calls. It's been a week," she said. I think he's gone." There was a long silence. She wasn't defending herself. She wasn't even asking for forgiveness. "I know I destroyed everything," she whispered. "You, the company. Us." A pause. "I just wanted to feel important to someone again. I wanted to matter." I looked at her. This woman, who once stayed up all night helping me balance ledgers in our garage. This woman, who made me coffee with a heart drawn in the foam when I landed my first real client. This woman, who used the same hands to send stolen files to another man. And I believed her, not the lies, but the part where she said she felt invisible. "I never stopped seeing you, Molly," I said quietly. "You just stopped seeing me." She didn't answer. She couldn't. The cafe was small and quiet, tucked between a bookstore and a laundromat on a side street I rarely drove down. She picked it, not me. I got there early. Habit, maybe, or maybe I didn't want to walk into a room where she was already waiting. Molly arrived 5 minutes late. She looked smaller somehow, like a version of herself folded in on itself. Her shoulders were rounded, her skin pale, her eyes red-rimmed like she'd slept in makeup she hadn't applied for days. She didn't hug me, didn't reach for my hand, just slid into the seat across from me and wrapped her fingers around a cup that had already gone cold. "I'm not here to ask anything," she said. Her voice was low, barely above the soft clink of silverware in the background. I wanted to see you, one last time." I said nothing. She stared down into the coffee like it held some kind of answer. "He shut me out," she said quietly. "Nathan, after everything." A hollow laugh escaped her lips. "He changed the passwords. Froze the accounts. Told me I was just convenient." I nodded slowly. Not out of satisfaction, not out of sympathy, just acknowledgement. She looked up at me then, eyes glistening. "I know I broke something I can never fix. I'm not asking for forgiveness," she said. "I wouldn't dare. I needed to say I'm sorry, really sorry, even if it means nothing now." Her voice cracked on that last word. I looked at her for a long time, this woman who had once been my world, my partner, my trusted half, and then became something else entirely. "Thank you," I said. She blinked, surprised. "There's no forgiveness here," I added, "but I don't hate you anymore." Molly's lips trembled, and for a second I thought she might cry. But instead, she just nodded, once, as if that was more than she deserved. We sat in silence for a minute longer, then she stood up. No hugs, no lingering looks. Just a quiet walk toward the exit, shoulders still slumped but somehow lighter, and I stayed there, watching the door close behind her, feeling for the first time in months the quiet edge of something like peace. The new office smelled like fresh paint and brewed coffee, white walls, open desks, fewer people but the right ones. There was no sleek espresso machine, no fancy furniture, just a solid table in the center of the meeting room and a team that gave a damn. We weren't as big as we used to be, but we were tighter, leaner, stronger. I kept the door open, literally and metaphorically. No more secrets behind closed panels, no more blind trust either. The new accountant, Barbara, was in her 60s, wore thick glasses and cardigans that smelled faintly of lavender. She double-checked everything, then checked it again. "I'm a little paranoid," she warned with a dry smile when I hired her. "Perfect," I said. "Me too." Some mornings I went up to the roof before the day began, coffee in hand, breeze on my face. From there I could see across to the building Nathan once rented. The sign, that flashy knockoff logo, was halfway gone now, just a few letters dangling crooked on rusted bolts. Apparently the venture collapsed 6 weeks in. No funding, no structure, no Molly feeding him classified info. I didn't celebrate, I just let it go. People asked if I was dating again. I wasn't. Not because I couldn't, but because, for the first time in years, I liked the quiet, the clarity. I spent weekends hiking, started painting again, terribly. Took my nephew to a baseball game, laughed with friends over cheap beer. There were moments when I'd see something, a recipe Molly used to make, a scarf she once wore, and my chest would tighten, but it passed. And I let it. I didn't want the past back. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want an apology anymore. It happened, it broke me. And I rebuilt. I sipped my coffee, still standing on that rooftop, watching the wind tug at the torn canvas on Nathan's building. I didn't want my old life back. It was lived, over, done, and I was still living, finally.